Hello, everyone. Welcome. Erica VB here. This is the Sincerely Spirit episodes or series, if you will. And today we're going to talk about something called shadow work. This is something that you will hear a lot about through your spiritual awakening and spiritual journey. It traditionally is well known through the Wiccan, paganism, witchcraft sort of community. I don't hear about it too much throughout religious communities that I've been involved with. It doesn't mean that it doesn't exist or people don't know about it. It just doesn't seem to be spoken of throughout those communities, in my experience at least. So what is shadow work? Shadow work in its most basic form is the idea of moving into your triggers and your traumas to heal yourself so that your true authentic self can come to the table, so that you're presenting who you truly are, so you're not making choices and decisions through that trigger or through that trauma. So that's essentially what shadow work is in a nutshell. It's the ability to work on your shadows, your darker parts of your nature, because we are complex people. We are dualities. We do have a binary relation. We are light and dark. And in order to understand the light, we have to move through the dark. And in order to understand the dark, we have to know the light. So there's that binary relation going on. And the shadow work really helps to pull out the triggers and the traumas of what I call those sort of lower vibrational energy emotions. And so what are they? Those are emotions such as anger, sadness, grief, frustration, those fear, those sort of emotions that I do positive and negative work. I don't do right or wrong, good or bad. Positive and negative sort of keep it neutral, right? So those are the emotions that are on the more negative side. And we really, during our spiritual awakening, want to work on why we're triggered into those lower vibrational energy emotions, and why we're making decisions and choices in our lives and responses to situations, people's events, etc., from those lower vibrational energy emotions. So that is the shadow work in a nutshell. I do have to caveat this with if at any time you're doing this shadow work and it becomes overwhelming, too much, too stressful, the fears sort of stagnant in you, and it's really like caking around you or building a bubble around you, and you just feel like you can't handle whatever traumas or triggers you're working on in your shadow work, I do suggest that you reach out to your primary care physician, a counselor, therapist, someone that can help you get tools in your toolbox to help you move through what it is you're experiencing and what it is you're working on. Highly recommend shadow work as part of your spiritual journey, and I guess I want to say that in my belief system, I don't feel like we can expand our experiences, expand ourselves mentally, emotionally, or spiritually if we're not doing some form of shadow work. And shadow work really is just the understanding of the shadow. It's accepting that we exist in a world of this binary relation. It's accepting that we have these particles of lower vibrational energy emotions within us. And it's accepting that sometimes we do respond to events, actions, people, etc., situations through those lower vibrational energy emotions, and not moving through life, because guilt and shame are also one of those lower vibrational energy emotions, not moving through life with the guilt or the shame of making the decision or response through the lower vibrational energy emotions. So this is why it's super important to understand what shadow work is, and super important to also do the shadow work. What do I recommend? The first thing I recommend, especially because we're dealing with the shadow work, so let's think about shadow work as if, say we're we're out in the sun and the sun's behind us, right? So the sun is beaming down on us and we're this light being underneath the sun. When the sun's beaming down on us from behind, the shadow is in front of us, right? So we come out into the world and this is what we're greeting people with, that shadow, right? We're not there in our true authentic self because the shadow is leading us. We're responding through those traumas. We're responding through those lower vibrational emotion energies, right? So the shadow work will afford us the opportunity to incorporate that shadow into us so that we can come to the table as our most authentic self. So think about when you do the shadow work, you're actually repositioning the sun so that it's in front of you and the shadow is behind you. It's still part of you, but you're leading more with your true authentic self. You understand that the shadow is there. You see the shadow, you understand the shadow, but the rest of the world doesn't, you're not presenting it to the rest of the world because you've learned and dealt with what that trigger is, where that trauma came from, and you've accepted it as part of who you are. So the first thing I recommend is to deal with the emotion that it has been triggered, that lower vibrational emotion, energy emotion. What has triggered that? And so the first thing I recommend is this book called The Secret Language of Feelings. This is a great book to have to keep on hand. So even if you're a seasoned shadow worker, if you will, I still recommend this book that you keep with you because you can go back. It's sort of like the encyclopedia of feelings, the dictionary of feelings, if you will. So you can go back into it and look at like the chapter 9, the wisdom of feeling sad. So sadness is a voice that says, I have lost someone or something important to me. So this book is really good about identifying those lower vibrational energy emotions and understanding why you may be experiencing that emotion. So in my personal shadow work, anger was something that I really had to work on, still have to work on. And so in this book, I learned that anger equals I feel the situation, person, or event was unfair or unjust. And so I had to work through, well, why did I feel this was unjust? Why did I feel this was unfair? And then it gives you the process. It's called the 1, 2, 3 process. I really enjoyed that as well, to help you move through that emotion. So the 1, 2, 3 process: identify, name the feeling, identify the cause of the feeling, identify a satisfying response. And in that satisfying response is where we get that positive outcome. So this is one of the good purposes of doing the shadow work is that we can figure out better ways to respond rather than responding from that lower vibrational energy emotion. We're going to find a higher vibrational energy emotion to respond through, something that's going to be more conducive to a positive environment than a negative environment. So highly recommend The Secret Language of Feelings. Even before you start your shadow work. So if you understand that you are triggered in this type of situation, but you don't necessarily understand where that emotion comes from, that's what that book is really good for, The Secret Language of Feelings. Another book I recommend in the process of your shadow work is the Shadow Work Journal here. So this book is pretty basic and simple in your shadow work. It is by Keela Shaheen. I think I said her name properly. I'm really bad with names though. So like there's a section here, jealousy. Who are you jealous of? What desires lie behind your jealousy? How often do you feel jealousy? So it's like, it's simple, it's basic, but I really like it. There's a gratitude list in here, fill in the blank. It talks about understanding the psyche, why shadow work is important. Carl Jung, the father of shadow work. So it gives a brief description of the history of shadow work, why it's important for us as we move through our experiences here in the physical world as the humans that we are. So I highly recommend that. And then the other is the Complete Shadow Work Workbook and Journal. Now you do not need both of these. I have both of these because I like options. This one is by Kelly Bramblett. I think I said that name right, not sure. But this one goes a little bit more in depth. Like there's a section being fearlessly authentic. Now that you have created your list of things that make you uniquely you, but that you perhaps keep under wraps, it's time to practice authenticity. So this one will sort of call out, say we have fears of being out in public, or we're more introverted than extroverted, and there's a fear within that. So why do you have that fear? What is that underlying fear? Where does it stem from? That's sort of like what the shadow work is going to do. It goes into that trauma or that trigger to understand why you have the fear of not being seen, or the fear of not communicating this, or the fear of, leaping into that next career opportunity, or taking those doors that are opening. So that's what the beauty of shadow work can do. Again, I just remind you that if this becomes too overwhelming or too big, because sometimes we can pull back into a trauma that was really severe in our childhood, and we don't know how to process it properly once it comes to the consciousness, right? So our subconscious said, whoa, 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 this is too much for you to handle at the age that you were at. And so our primitive response was to shield ourselves from the pain and the hurt of it and bury it into our subconscious. And now as adults, we're making choices and decisions and responses through that trauma. And it could be a very severe trauma. So again, just reach out to your primary care physician, counselor, therapist, to help move through that, because those can be very overwhelming, very intense, and it can stop you from progressing through your shadow work and really opening yourself up to be your most authentic person. There is something else I want to talk about in terms of shadow work. It's called the emotion code, because shadow work is really about the triggers and the traumas. And what do triggers and traumas do? They create
Todd Gardner.
emotions in us, and they're those lower vibrational energy emotions. And so that's what we're trying to work on. We're trying to work on responding responding more positively in situations that trigger us into those lower vibrational energy emotions, so that for ourselves, it's not for the other people, but it's for ourselves, so that we sit in a more higher vibration, so that we are in a more positive mindset, even when negative things are happening to us. So the other thing I want to talk about is something called emotion code. I'm not very familiar with it, but I have had it done. So what is emotion code? From my understanding and my experience, there is a trained professional who utilizes the system. It's kind of like Reiki for your emotions. I highly recommend it. It's really interesting to experience. So if anybody's had Reiki, it's very similar in terms of the energy clearing. You may be tired afterwards, drink the water. It could be a couple days for your body and your DNA and everything to process what's happening. But it literally asks certain questions, and they figure out. So say you have fear. A certain kind of fear. Okay, well, where did it come from? So they're going to establish the emotion. They're going to establish a time frame for that emotion. They're going to establish whether it was it's from this life, a past life, carried down from a generation. So if it's a generational trauma or generational emotion that you're dealing with, and then they're going to clear that blockage. Okay. So that's what's kind of cool about it. I do recommend it. Like I said, I had it done, and I felt like the weight of the world was on my back. And and there were like 13 things that were found. Just from those 13 things, it was like the backpack of emotions was lifted off me. Really cool experience to have. So if you're curious about it, look it up. I'm not too familiar with it, like I said. So that's called emotion code. And then one more thing I think we need to be aware of throughout our spiritual awakening, throughout our spiritual journey, not just through our shadow work, is the idea of the power of now, of just being mindful and present in the moments that we're experiencing. Because it really allows us to, this is one thing I learned in Buddhism, that was, my interpretation of what I've read about Buddhism. They live in the now, they live in the present, but there's a sense of neutrality in how they respond and see situations. And not everybody can afford to enjoy Buddhism, because it can be too neutral for some people. But what I found in it is the beauty of mindfulness that they utilize and experience and express throughout tumultuous, traumatic negative situations and also in the positive situations. So there is a book that I recommend if you would like to read up on the power of now. It's Eckhart Tolle. He's pretty well known in the spiritual community. I'm not sure about the religious community or just in general, but he's got a lot of stuff on YouTube that you can look up as well. This book I highly recommend. Clearly, I've read it. I've got all of my little tabs here, things that made like really triggered something inside of me to think about, because that's part of your shadow work too. So say you are reading something like this, or say you read a book and it's a fictional book and then something in that book just triggers something in your gut and you're like, wow, I feel this do. That may be triggering a trauma for you. So say you read a fictional book about a woman who gets abused. That may induce a trauma within you that you didn't realize you were still harboring fear from it, anger from it, frustration from it, sadness from it, grief from it, and you're carrying that within you. So that's what the shadow work will do. It can address that. Again, I caveat this with, if it's too much, too stressful, and you don't feel like you have a handle on it or control over it, reach out to primary care physician, therapist, counselor, etc. So that's pretty much what I wanted to talk about today. I really feel like this is like the basis, the foundation of where you need to start, though, the secret language of feelings. Because if you don't understand why you're getting angry, or you don't understand why you're sitting in that fear, it's going to be hard to transition into that deeper understanding of that emotion, that trauma that's within you that is having you express that lower vibrational energy emotion. So that's today's episode. This was all about shadow work, kind of what it is, some recommendations on what you can utilize to help you understand and to help you resources for you to utilize, if you will, as you move through your shadow work. Of course, if it becomes overwhelming, too stressful, too fearful, too much, please reach out to your medical care team. I haven't met many doctors that incorporate holistic healing into their practice, but I have met a few doctors that understand the brain better than we do. And so in that, they can help give us the tools that our physicalness needs, not our spiritual, but our physical bodies, our ego, if you will. So that is today's episode. Again, if you have any questions, concerns, or you just need to bounce things off, I do offer spiritual guidance, Q&A sessions, if you will, or if you feel like you need help maybe in the progress of your spiritual development, you can absolutely reach out to me at ericasfrequency@gmail.com. I also offer oracle card readings. I don't do future predictions because I believe in free will. Sometimes it can come in that way, but they really validate and support what's happening in the here and now, because I do believe being in the here and now, the mindfulness of being in the now, is super important. If we live in the past, what are we doing? We're living in a situation, environment, idea that isn't conducive to what's happening right now. And if we live in the future, we're just living in that constant anxiety and stress of, is this going to happen? How do I get to that? So my oracle readings are really just to validate and support who you are right now, how you got to where you are, and ideas on how to move forward in a positive way from where you are now. So again, ericasfrequency@gmail.com, where you can schedule that. I also do evidential mediumship. I'm certified in that, and also trained in animal communication. And sometimes that can be very healing too, those types of sessions. We get that validation from our loved ones who have transitioned, those apologies, the thank yous and the gratefulness, etc., through those sessions of evidential mediumship. Same thing with animal communication in terms of animals that have transitioned as well. So if you're interested in one of those readings, again, ericasfrequency@gmail.com. I hope everybody has a lovely week coming up. And if you're watching this from America, I hope your 4th of July weekend was great. Again, this week's episode was all about shadow work, our feelings and emotions that a lot of us want to run away from. And again, if you have any questions, please reach out, ericasfrequency@gmail.com. Please remember that if it becomes too much, to reach out to your medical care team, if you will, counselor, therapist, primary care physician, to get those tools in the toolbox you may need. I hope everybody has a beautiful day. We'll talk again.